All right, so what we're going to do now is obviously, most users would not want to dig into this type of code to actually change these parameters. We need to create something a little bit more intuitive so that a user can actually output this, type of information without changing code. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import something called IPyWidgets. So I import IPyWidgets. Now, you may need to do a pip install of IPyWidgets before this will work, but if you don't, then it'll just import exactly like that. And then from IPyWidgets, we're going to import two things. We're going to import interact and interact manually. And this is just kind of the generic set of tools that allow you to build user interfaces within GUIDE. So essentially, all we have to do is instead of defining these like this, we're instead going to define these using widgets. So right here, I'm going to type in @interact manually. And this just tells it to start a widget with parentheses after it. And I'm going to hit enter to get some room to work. And we're going to define 3 different widgets. One widget for choices, one for preferred unemployment rate, and one for preferred median salary. So we'll do the first one first just to show you what it looks like. And we're going to create a slider, so where we can choose something for salary. So let's call this, our salary is pref salary. So this is the actual name of the value that we want to set. So we'll have pref salary equals IPyWidgets dot float slider, because we want a slider, and you'll see what that is in a moment. The minimum value of our salary, of our slider, we want to be the minimum salary that we have in our database. So we'll set that equal to the median minimum, comma, and I'm going to hit enter. The maximum that we want here is going to be the same thing, but median dot max, comma. The step size, so every time a user moves the cursor, how far it moves, let's say $100. The initial value that it's going to be at, we'll set it to 75,000. And the description that we want a user to see, let's call it salary goal. Okay, so that defines our widget. Now to run this, we actually need to put in some dummy variables for our other ones. We have choices, unemployment rate, median salary. All we've done here is median salary. So I'm going to do comma, enter, and I'm just going to put in a dummy variable. So we'll do pref salary, or I'm sorry, pref unemployment, and we'll do equals 0.07, and then topics, and we'll just do a really quick one, computers and mathematics. That's it. So I'm going to delete these. You do have to delete these because we're no longer going to be programmatically telling the algorithm what these preferences are. We're going to be using the user interface. So we'll get rid of this. And then down at the bottom where we have this nearest neighbors, we're going to get rid of this as well. So we're not going to be calling that function manually. Rather, this will call the function for us. So we don't have to worry about that as well either. So we'll delete this. Now we'll go ahead and run this snippet. And what you see down here now are these sliders. So we can choose our preferred unemployment, our salary, and you can see the salary, the slider goes from 35,000 up to 125,000, which is going to be representative of the minimum and the maximum that we defined here. Every time I move a little bit, it's going to move by about 100. So I can set that step size. And then the salary goal, right? That's the description that we set. These are just placeholders. When I click Run Interact, that will actually attempt to run this particular function. Now, in this particular case, it's throwing an error because we actually haven't finished building everything, right? We actually need to finish building all of these different options. But once we click this Run button, that's when we'll run our algorithm. So with that, let's actually, build the rest of our algorithm. So up here, let's set pref unemployment. So we're going to do the kind of same thing we did before. All right, and then on this one, we're actually going to do something slightly different. We're going to have topics. Here we need to create a list. So we're going to use a different widget. We're going to use called a select multiple, and this will let users choose kind of which domains they want. Our options in this particular case will be equal to BF major category unique to list. So what we're doing here is we are going into the data frame. We're taking every single major category. We're identifying the unique subset of those, and we're creating a list. And we pass that list into here, and that will just give us a list. If I copy this on its own, and I paste it down here and run this, this is the list that it gives us. So this is just the list of all of those different individual items. So we're going to go back here. Let's set a default value, arts, and description. Call this topics. So now we should be able to run this, and we'll see. Oh, I have to put a comma there. Go ahead and run this, and we'll see here. So now we have our unemployment rate slider. That is a much cleaner unemployment rate slider. We have our salary goal slider, so we can go up and down, and we can choose as many of these as we want. How cool is that? So when we run this, now we're getting this set of results based on this user interface. So when a user chooses these items, that's the same as when we were defining our choices with a list. It's just doing that programmatically through these interactions instead of using computer code to do it. So this lets us kind of choose more intelligently what we want. So that's really close to kind of a final product that we might actually give to someone. But we want to do one more thing, which is I've been hypothetically saying, oh, what if we had our preferences at 0.0480K and an imaginary dot right here? Let's take the imaginary out of it and actually have a dot that gets placed here that represents the user's preferences. So they can see where their preferences are in relation to the top 5 that we're giving them. And this is actually very, very easy to do because we've really almost already done it. So down here at the very bottom, before we actually return our values, what we're going to do is we're going to first add a new row of data to this nearest neighbor data frame inside of the function. So the nearest neighbor data frame is going to have a lot of different data in it already. What it's not going to have is a row of data that's representative of the user's selected points, right? So if I say unemployment rate of 0.02 and salary goal of 66,000, there's not a row of data that says 0.02 and 66,000. I'm comparing these values to every other row. So I want to add a row of data so that I can visualize that. So I'm going to say NNDF, and I'm just going to append. So equals NNDF dot append, and I'm going to append a new row that has a median salary of our chosen salary, so pref salary, a unemployment rate of our preferred unemployment. And then our major category, we're going to call something. So our major category, remember, major category is normally one of these: social sciences, physical sciences, so on and so forth. We're going to call our major category something special. We're going to call it user preference. So we can go ahead and run this, and this will append to the data frame another row of data that just has these values, and that's it. So we'll run this. Now we have our data frame has that one more, that one additional kind of element. We have to set ignore index equals true, and you don't really have to worry too much about that. So when we do this, what we've done is we've effectively added a additional row that has this information. So now we can visualize it using our plotly scatter plots just like we've done before. So let's do a figure. We're going to define it as a scatter plot. The data frame, x equals unemployment rate. We'll do y equals the median salary. Color equals major category. And this is, again, all the same we've done before. Cover data equals major. Okay. And then figure.show. Now, when we run this, what we should see now is the list of the top 5 as well as a scatter plot representing our preferences. So let's actually, I'm going to go in and I'm going to choose kind of my own background here. So I obviously like computer and mathematics. I like the social sciences. I like the physical sciences. Let's see, and I'm going to pick one more. I like natural resources. I generally don't mind a little bit of risk as long as it comes with a high salary. So we'll set my unemployment rate, fine, 15, but I also want a really high salary. So I'm going to run my model. This is the Dan model. So my preferences, wow. Here's my user preference way out here. right? So some crazy high unemployment rate and some crazy high salaries. That's weird. What's going on, you ask me? Well, let's look back at our code and try to figure out why is that point up at above 1.5. That doesn't make sense. My preference was 0.15, not 1.5. Well, the trick to this is, and you'll remember, these two variables we saved, our display version of unemployment and our salary. What I've done here is when I've added unemployment rate as pref unemployment, this right here gets normalized, right? I divide pref employment by the max. And so in my case, it's 0.15 divided by the max ends up with a very, very large value. That's obviously an error. So all we have to do is, instead of using pref unemployment here, we just use the display value. So I'm going to use this pref unemployment display and pref sal display, and this will actually give us the correct answers. So let's go ahead and run this again. I'll run mine again. So, well, this time I'm going to be very interested in, let's see, law and public policy, education, and industrial arts. And now we have something that looks a little bit more reasonable. So we have my major, my user preference. It's that purple dot right here. So we had 75,000 and 0.05. And what do we see here? We suspect that transportation sciences and technologies and construction services are going to be two that should show up on my top 5. And here we have it, transportation sciences and technologies, construction services. So now you have a script that a user can plug in what their particular preferences are. I'm computers and math, very risky, but also a very high salary. Run. This is now my preferences for 15% unemployment, very, very high salary. The closest one to me is way down here, right? So computer programming and data processing, computer programming and data processing. So we can now see exactly why and how these preferences are being constructed. That's it for modeling, guys. You've just built your first model, so congratulations. And in the next series of labs, we're going to start moving into how to use these types of models for prediction.